Stationed in Korea, my sergeant threatened to tell command I was drinking underage. Fortunately, I had pictures of our squad drinking and he was present, so I told I would show them to command if he told on me. Current job. Previous manager. I was on a team of 2, and when the lady I worked alongside with quit, they decided not to replace her. I have a young child, who as children so often do, get sick a lot. Being the only person on my team, and the most important role for our office to function since it is literally the first step in all our processes, I had a very hard time whenever I used my PTO with short notice. I had given my manager multiple ways to fix the issue, but she never would hear any of it. She also was in a remote office, so she had zero clue what I did with my day. She finally sent me a very angry email basically telling me I could not use my PTO for emergencies all the time when my son got sick. I wrote back a long, detailed list of every method I suggested to fix the issue, along with the fact that I was the only person in my position for months, and that our company policy states in bold letters that using PTO because you or your loved one is sick is not only acceptable, but encouraged. My manager responded to my email by stating she would forward my concerns to HR and that I should probably polish up my resume. But HR was in our office that day, for the first time in 6 months. Great coincidence, right? So I went in, asked if I could speak about an issue concerning my manager, and explained everything as it happened. The HR rep had this look on her face like she was going to murder someone. She asked me to forward the entire email chain to her, which I did. Then she called me back to talk to her. A few people I talked to were aware that the manager and I had issues, and the lead of every team in our office basically told the HR rep that the entire office can't function without me and that I've been doing the work of 3 people for 9 months. Later that day, my manager sent me a very angry message over email basically saying I was fired and that I was to pack my things immediately for failing to do my job and because I was causing a hostile work environment. I forwarded this to HR rep, and then walked to her office and asked if I should pack my stuff. She looked at me, and in a single, sweet sentence said not a chance, she's royally fricked. And that's basically how my manager went from making $80k a year to being fired on a Wednesday with no compensation, no benefits, and no way to collect unemployment. All around a productive day. When I was in 8th grade, we had to create a presentation on a book we had just read, including a skit from one of the scenes. Here's the best part: we were forced to work in groups. Being an introvert, I hate group work. What I hate even more is when your group mates don't do their work. The day we were assigned the project, we decided to divvy up the slides equally. It was a Google Slides, so we could all contribute to the same document. The class ended, and I had already finished one of my slides. One boy only changed the color of the title, and the other 2 didn't do anything. 2 days later, I had finished all of my slides. Nobody else had done anything. I offered to start the script for the skit since I had finished, and asked for the others to contribute. Nothing. A couple more days passed. I had finished the skit as well, and all of the other slides were still empty. Finally, the night before the assignment was due came. I had hoped that even a title had been added. The slides were still empty. I finally decided to just finish it myself. I was up until about midnight, and the slides were not the best quality. Finally, presentation day comes. Of course, my groupmates felt absolutely no remorse for doing no work. It was our turn to present, and my groupmates nominated me to present. I finally decided to show them the consequences of their actions. I told them that we were all to present the slides we were supposed to work on. They obviously didn't know what they were doing and were extremely unprepared. My grade went down, but theirs went down even more. I told them that we were all to present the slides we were supposed to work on. You should have said instead each one presents the slides they worked on. Then, do all the presentation yourself and tell the audience in the end. And now my group mates will present their work. Step aside and look into their eyes dead cold and wait like everyone else for them to talk. My grandma lived on a main road in Miami. She had grapefruit trees in her yard that grew huge grapefruits. When I was little, my older brothers taught me to roll the grapefruits out into traffic and watch them splat as the cars drove by. They couldn't see where the fruits were coming from because we hid behind the bushes to launch them. It was kinda like reverse Frogger. The goal was to get a good splat. When I was 15, Grandma's health was declining, so my family stayed at her house for a couple days to get it cleaned out and ready to sell. I decided it would be fun to take my younger brothers out and show them grapefruit splat. After about 10 minutes of us hurling double-digit grapefruits out into traffic, one of us rolled a big, fat grapefruit right in front of a cop car without paying attention. We all ran to the backyard, but when I looked out front, my youngest brother Barry was still out there. Apparently he froze up. I come walking up hurriedly to the police officers and tried to play it off. What seems to be the problem, officer? I asked. Who are you and where are this boy's parents? He asked. I replied, I'm his older brother. My parents are at the grocery store, so I'm babysitting until they get back. The cop was super chill and goes, okay, well, your brother was rolling grapefruits out into traffic, so we just stopped to explain to him why that's dangerous. I looked over to Barry and winked to let him know that we were about to be off the hook, and I said to the cop, I'm so sorry. I'll make sure to have a talk with him and it won't happen again. Well, frickin' Barry misread my wink as it read 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 my wink, and my dad's not gone. He's inside. The cop looks down at me with a huge grin and says, let's go see dad. I proceeded to get into trouble for bringing my brothers into something dangerous, then grounded for lying to the cops. I was at a church camping trip for boys at Yosemite. One of the guys in charge was new and a real douche. He made it his goal in life to punish every kid. I was a real rule follower, so he couldn't punish me, and he started getting angry about that. He would even drop comments like your turn is coming, etc. Now, when I was younger, I was really thin and small, but in my mind I was like all the other kids and mentally tough, so this got me in trouble. I would get injured on these trips and the head guy was always getting in trouble with my parents for not keeping me safe. So one of the rules is that nobody can ever be alone. If you are caught alone at any time, you are in trouble. So, we're getting the campfire ready for lunch, and some kid comes running up to the group and says that there's a woman bathing naked in the river. All the kids get up and run to go see. So, to not be alone, I have to go with the group. Now, I don't go to the edge and look, because I didn't feel like it was right to go spy on the poor woman just trying to enjoy nature. Anyway, douche leader sees his opportunity and says that since I got up and went over with the group, I was also in trouble, despite the fact that I had no other choice. Punishment at this camp was holding a giant rock over your head. Somehow, I was the only one that got in trouble, not everyone else that looked, proving that he didn't care about actual rules but just that he had power over everyone. I was supposed to hold this rock over my head for 15 minutes and then come back. Of course he was too lazy to oversee punishments, so I was supposed to do this alone, which is another problem. Since there are bears and perverts around, no kid is supposed to be alone. So finally, since I didn't deserve this punishment, I was going to take this guy down. So I dropped the rock on my head on purpose. Then I just lay there. I could feel a large bump rising on my head. I must have laid there for about 35 minutes. Finally, they realized that I didn't show up for lunch and someone asked where I was, and then everyone ran over to see me laying there with a rock next to my head. I said that the last thing that I remembered is that my arms were getting weak holding the rock over my head. Then the leader checked my head and found the bump. He was livid, because now he had to tell my mom I got hurt again. When asked why I was holding a rock over my head, I made sure to let them know that it was douche leader's punishment. He tried to deny it, but 25 young voices called him liar simultaneously, since they had all endured the same punishment. Douche leader was stripped of his power and spent the rest of the camp as just another camper. In fact, he called someone and left a day early. It was his first and last activity with the group. You literally hit yourself in the head with a rock to get back at him. This is beautifully petty. In 7th grade, my teacher decided to use process drama to teach about the Holocaust. He told us we can hide anywhere in the building, and if we successfully evade him looking for us, we will get a bunch of extra credit. Conversely, if we are caught, we will get 5 points for each other classmate we rat out. I hid successfully in the computer class under a spare TV card that barely fit me. My soon-to-be not friend had chosen poorly in the same room and was easily found. Upon walking out, I very clearly remember him yelling, "Wait, Yams is in the corner under the cart." I can't remember being so mad at someone. Ratted out for a mere 5 points. I yelled at him and Def overreacted. The lesson being a process drama. That was kind of the point. To experience the fear and potential rage at your neighbors for ratting you out. For those of you who don't know, this lesson style is to give the student first-hand emotional connection to whichever content you'd like to teach. It's incredibly effective. TLDR. I was taken down along with a classmate and lost extra credit. We honestly need to do that more in education. Hands-on or situations like that are way more memorable and can lead to having empathy. Something I fear we lack in first world society. My uncle used to own a hardware store in our crappy little town. He wanted to put up a cover between two buildings that he owned, but the town council wouldn't let him. They never gave any real reason, like, we need to leave the area uncovered because of his building codes. They just went on a power trip and said, you're not gonna do it. Eventually, due to some other power trips, my uncle threatened to move his shop a few towns over. Town council went all, you're not gonna do it in a I dare you way. So my uncle did just that. If I remember correctly, he paid the most in taxes, so all the money the town was getting from him disappeared. Most of his employees were in high school and couldn't drive. When he moved, the kids went with him. Since the parents had to drive their kids to their job, they decided they would also pick up groceries and other things they needed while they were in the new town. So the cloth shop and grocery store went out business. Since no one could get what they needed in our small town, just about everyone moved. Now the town is run down and there's barely anything here. My dad said it used to be a nice little town. Now hardly anyone lives here and everything is falling in. My uncle even warned the council, if I leave I will take this town with me, but they didn't listen. Jesus, your uncle didn't just drain the lifeblood of the town. He slit its throat and watched it bleed out. This should be on our nuclear revenge. My next door neighbor kept picking my plum tree dry when I would go out of town, so I cut it down out of frustration. No plum jelly for anyone. I have a plum tree and it'll have nearly ripe plums all over it one day and none the next. The birds always get them just before they're ripe, so I rarely get any. I had a group project I had to do with 4 other people. 3 out of the 4 were great, but there were roles each of us had to fill in the group for the project to work right. The final girl never once participated in the project, so her role was completely empty and it was dragging the rest of us down. We couldn't just fill in for her either because she kept her specific instructions to herself. The other 3 and I did the best we could, but our instructor didn't seem impressed. He had a few questions about how we came to our conclusion and who did what in the group. The other 3 were trying to keep focus on the roles they filled, but the instructor was asking about the role that the one girl skipped out on. I answered that we didn't have anything from that role because what's her butt didn't come to any of the project sessions. We just did what we could without her. Until that point, the girl that didn't do crap was standing there acting like she deserved any of the grade we all got. Once I said something, the other 3 girls confirmed that yes, Becky's butt did 0% of the work. She tried to say she was just really busy, but another girl shut her down by saying she saw her at several parties the past couple weeks. That girl got a 0 and the rest of us got like an 85 or around that number. I felt like a snitch, but frick that girl. When you are in trouble at school, it helps that you're related to someone who works for the school district. I had a math teacher my junior year of high school who was also the cheerleading coach, and she worshipped every student who was an athlete, and she hated theater kids. She would make theater kids, or basically any non-athlete, trade seats with a student athlete because they need a better seat to view the board. She basically told us that student athletes' education was more important than ours. One day, the drama club was planning a field trip the same day of a really big math test. My math teacher was already fully aware of the field trip and said that the theater kids are allowed to take the test at another time. Well, the day of the field trip comes, and she pretends she is unaware of the field trip. She called up our drama teacher and threw a tantrum that the theater kids were missing. We then got in trouble with the drama teacher, and we received a 0 on the math test. I told my aunt, a math teacher, and the head of the math department for the whole entire school district, about this, and she looked into it. Teacher didn't get fired, but got in trouble. Well, she found out that it was my aunt that reported her, and now she was purposely failing me. I actually had no trouble in math, especially since my aunt was tutoring me, and I was doing well. so there was no reason why I was failing except for the fact that the teacher wanted revenge on me for getting her in trouble. So this time I tell my aunt, but in a different way. I say that my teacher's material is not making sense, which was actually true. She had no idea what she was doing, and my aunt called her up and asked her what she plans on teaching her students. My teacher was caught by surprise and didn't know how to exactly answer my aunt and kept giving BS answers. My aunt then looked into it some more and confirmed that basically the teacher had no idea what she was doing. And well, she got fired. I did have to take summer school since I still failed her class, but I basically ended her teaching career. In a tech writing class I took, there was a group project that saw all students separated into groups of 4. We figured out what sort of assignment we were doing and decided up responsibilities. It became obvious from day one that our 4th team member had no interest in contributing and planned to just skate by on whatever grade we got. Rather than accept that, I went straight to the professor, told her what I thought was going on and asked to either be reassigned or even allowed to do the project solo rather than settle for a lesser grade due to one crappy teammate. She offered a better deal for me to bring back to the 2 contributing teammates. We do a 3-man presentation, and if our lame duck 4th doesn't have anything to contribute, he would be graded singularly. I tried throughout the duration of the project to get him on board and involved, but he blew off every opportunity to contribute. Presentation day came and the 3 of us who worked got top marks. Then the professor came up and called out our 4th guy in front of the entire class. I told you all on day 1 I don't tolerate freeloaders in my class. 4th guy contributed nothing to his team's project, so he will not receive his team's grade. Provide nothing, get nothing. He never showed up for another class, but he also never withdrew. The dipshit ended up with an F in the course. Couple other folks in the class knew him. I learned later that he did this for multiple classes that semester and ended up getting kicked out the next semester. Reminds me of a story my cousin told of his math class in college. Got assigned to work with, as he described them, Russian kids who refused to talk to him and wouldn't let him contribute to the group project. He failed that class and later dropped out entirely. In one of my first jobs, a colleague who was threatened by me, the new worker, shy, inexperienced, learning little by little, just out of college, was slowly putting ideas in the head of my boss until I get fired. The day after I was fired, there was a meeting with the boss and other important positions in which I had been working hard to make a good impression. I knew who would take all the credit: the lazy bastard who had stabbed me in the back. It turns out that one of the things that I knew how to do was synchronize the files on my personal computer to an internet cloud, in order to have my files available at home. I knew that my partner was too lazy and would not thoroughly review the documents, so from the comfort of my home I modified the presentation. Some information here and there, nothing excessive, and like the icing on the cake, a hidden message after a photograph on the last panel that would only be visible during the presentation. Thank you for not paying attention to the erroneous data and not looking at the information that does not match in the least with what I exposed. I am glad nobody will notice because they are not interested and will not ask any crap. Frick off. I would like to have been there, but as far as I knew, the whole floor heard the screams of my boss. I know, it wasn't very mature, but it was satisfying. Revenge is a dish best served lukewarm. When I was a little kid, my mom made me hold her hand to cross the street out of Publix, you know, as parents do. She slipped on a wet spot on the street, screamed cocksucker, and yanked me down with her. Then she had some kind of misfired reflex and slapped her hand over my face to try to cushion my fall, I guess. At the time, I thought my mom was randomly trying to assault me or SMTH right in the goddamn parking lot. Dogs must feel the same way when you get up in the night to pee and accidentally hit them with your foot. To them, you got up in the middle of the night just to hit them and walk away. In 3rd grade, my friend told my crush I liked her, so I told everyone he put her finger in his butt. He didn't, but I had a reputation for never lying, so they believed me. Growing up, my best friend and I got in trouble for cutting up brand new, expensive jeans to make shorts. Her mom was, rightfully, screaming at me, so I said, "What about her daughter?" She asked me to and handed me the scissors and got us both grounded, so at least we could sit together in her room, lol. Had an absolutely terrible boss at a hospital. She had been there for almost 30 years and was almost omnipotent. She was an absolutely horrendous human being in every way, shape and form. She liked to pick one person every day at random that worked with her and pick on them until they cried. She would then fake false feelings about how sorry she was, that she didn't mean to do it, and so on. Our department ran the Toys for Tots drive at our hospital. She insisted that all toys were kept in her office. It didn't take me long to figure out she was stealing the toys. I took photographic evidence as well as writing down everything I could in the ensuing months about everything she was doing. I knew at this point she knew that I did not like her and that I had pretty much figured out what she was about, so she turned her attention to me and made my life miserable. I finally did quit. However, I made it my mission to take her with me. Everyone in the hospital, including the CEO, we're somewhat afraid of her and we're just trying to get her to her 30 years so she could go out naturally. After I quit, I sent photos and all of my written documentation to the CEO of the hospital, who I had tried to talk about all of this stuff with before I left but could tell he was not listening. I then wrote if she was not dealt with, I was going to notify the local news channels about what I knew was going on with her. Needless to say, she was forced to retire immediately upon her 30th anniversary, which was a week away. She still won in this story. She wasn't fired and just got to retire early instead of putting in the work. I did customer service for a major cable company as tier 2 internet support. First native English speaker you spoke to. I worked for a third-party company that was contracted by the cable company. The company was terrible, like Walmart terrible. I got written up for hitting the exact minimum quota, intentionally, every month without improving. They promoted people to managers as a trial for 3 months, then put them back to their previous position. There was no pay change, and I had to quit my part-time job that I loved because they couldn't get the schedule correct. My new manager was a grade A jerk and was trying to get me fired, and so I decided to bring him with me. Shortly after he took over, he actually was friendly towards me and actually messaged me on work chat about an escalation call he was on. The guy is going to kill himself because he didn't have internet, and proceeded to joke about the guy killing himself. Now work chat can be configured to save everything locally on your PC, and I made sure it was set for that to cover my butt. I decided to quit about a month after this incident. Sent my resignation to HR and CC'd him. Attached was also the transcript of the conversation, and I cited that as one of the biggest contributors to my leaving. He was let go. When I was in my second year of Canadian high school, basically 8th grade, our final English project was to make a movie in teams. This project was going to take half a year to make and was worth a lot of points in our grades. I was pretty hyped up because I love doing amateur movies. Our class had 7 boys, me, my 2 friends, 3 guys that were known for being lazy and unfun to work with, and another guy who is useless in the story. So me and my friends had to be paired in teams with the 3 other guys, but at least we were 3 willing to work, and one of the other guys looked to be willing to work seriously with us. Before we started working on the script, a group of girls were missing 2 people in their team, and my friend just joined them, leaving me with the 3 slackers. The whole process was a nightmare. We had a shared account on Google to keep the script and video clips so we could all work on the project even when we were not at school. The script, that I almost entirely wrote, was often griefed by one of the guy who found it funny to put racial slurs all over the script. While filming, my teammates kept dragging on and doing nothing. The racial slurs guy purposely took 2 hours to read correctly 1 sentence in front of the camera. We were not moving forward as fast as we were supposed to, so the teacher was suspicious of what we were doing. One day, I was forced to miss school because of a dentist appointment, and those suckers decided to take advantage of my absence to go tell the teacher that it was all my fault for everything, including griefing the script. When I got back in the afternoon, I was stared at by the whole class and was promptly told by my teammates and by the teacher that I was now out of the project and would be getting a 0 if I did not give a complete script and a 5-min plus movie. But it was for the next Monday, so I had only a weekend to make a half a year project, so I couldn't do anything and got a 0. I was pee out of my mind. AMD. Then I remembered the shared account. I went back, deleted the entire script and replaced the movie with a corrupt file, which they didn't check before giving it to the teacher. I don't know how, but the teacher managed to reserve a whole movie theater room for the sighting, and all the English students were there. I was able to see their confused looks as their movie didn't play, and everyone else too. since we all had a sheet with which movie was coming next. When the teacher checked, there was no script and no movie, so they got a 0 too. And since they forgot I could have still accessed the project, I got no crap and the blame went to them. I might have not passed my English class that year, but I made sure neither did them. TLDR. Teammates ruin a project, put the blame on me and make me have a 0, so I make them fail the class too. When I was a teenager, my second job ever was at Journeys. My manager was terribly irresponsible. He would leave me alone at the store even though he wasn't supposed to do that. He kept the back room a mess so that merchandise would get lost back there and our inventory would be off. He'd steal commission from our sales by ringing them under his name. But most egregiously, he habitually turned a blind eye when his friends would shoplift when they visited. Our shrink rate was sky high, like thousands and thousands of dollars of merchandise missing from a small store in a suburban mall. When he finally got caught, he implicated the whole staff, so they fired literally everyone. I was devastated. I had a hard time getting another job after that for a while. Turns out getting fired from your second job ever for being implicated in a shoplifting scheme is a really bad look. I hope that guy is still rotting in retail heck. Thanks a lot, Ray. Freaking Ray. When I was in grade 10 we were assigned to do some report in science class. The two girls I was assigned to work with were lazy and dumb. For background, I knew one of the girls as she used to be in my elementary and used to bully me cause I was a keener. What she didn't know is that I chilled out more in high school. With that said, Chem was my best subjects and I had almost 100 in the class, but those two were just passing. Anyways, to get back to the story, this was the final project and if we did well on this, it would count for 30% of our mark and the final would be only 10%, but anything under a 70 meant that the project would be 10% but the final would be 30%. So since the girls didn't contribute, I did not hand in the project. The teacher found this weird for me but I just kept making excuses until they forgot. Anyways, come 2 weeks later, they get the news they had a 0. They confronted me and I told them they didn't do frick all so I didn't either. Said both of you are now failing and I still had an 80 so have fun in here next year. Like expected they both failed the class and I got 95% on my final. When I was a kid, I was at a Chinese restaurant sitting next to my uncle. As he put his teacup down, he spilled some on the tablecloth. So I laughed at him. He laughs too. Then he takes my teacup and upends it on the table in front of me, then says to my dad, "Hey, look at this mess." I mean, that's it's normal to make a mess in a dim sum restaurant, but still. I worked as a mechanic and tow truck driver for this man. I had a class A CDL. I could drive any class truck and was a master mechanic, but my specialty was older cars with carburetor. Anyway, he had a contract with a major moving van company, where people can rent a truck to move themselves. This man would go on a service call where a customer left the lights on, replace the batteries, charge rental company for new batteries, take the batteries he took out of van, recharge them and do it over and again. Rental company was paying for new batteries that were not new. They had been used over and over. Saw him once taking new tires off a rental truck that fit his tow truck. When I left, I called rental company and told them. Oof, that's a major lawsuit waiting to happen. Sort of in the middle of this kind of thing right now. My boss threatened that if I ran off his favorite worker, that he'd shut the business down. There are a number of vital functions that only I can perform in that office. Nobody else is even close to being trained to do them. He's allowed me to become too important. This is not an ego thing. I'm looking for a job. When I leave, he'll have to close down. Truly. Pre-takedown story. Nice. In an attempt to defame me, my soon-to-be ex-wife asked me, in front of court clerk, "Do you still think you're an alien from outer space?" Everyone saw how crazy she was and sided with me in court. What is the greatest way someone has attempted to humiliate or harass you, which ended up backfiring? My dad used to work in the maintenance department at a very expensive and very high-class boys-only high school. It was actually a pretty respectable job, requiring a plethora of trade qualifications and a working brain. He was pretty committed to the job and often pulled overtime on the weekends. But, because it was a rich school in a rich area, there was a lot of snobbery involved. Kids' parents were buttholes. The kids were practically uncontrollable. Dad handled it all by just being incredibly good at his job and never getting mad, just even. So, one Saturday morning he goes into the workshop on campus to build some new tables and desks. At 9 o'clock he gets in, makes coffee and gets set up, before turning on the extractor fans in the workshop that remove the sawdust. As a side note, you're legally allowed to operate machinery like this from 7 o'clock in the morning onwards, in terms of noise pollution restrictions. Cue a guy, most likely a parent of one of the boys at the school, storming over from his house in the properties behind the workshop, in his dressing gown, absolutely flips his crap, screaming at Dad to turn the machinery off. Dad just stands his ground, explains that he's allowed to be running it and waited until mid-morning out of courtesy. That's not good enough, and this guy starts making threats along the lines of, "They know me at the college. I know people. I can have you sacked. Who is your supervisor?" Dad says, "I can give you the maintenance supervisor's number," and hands the guy a business card. Guy pulls out his mobile and dials the number. He's staring Dad in the face, still pumped up and ready to start bagging him out